Hey guys, Mustached here, and I'm here to do something a little bit different here. With the whole political climate being as chaotic as it's been, I figured, why not allot an opportunity for those inclined to have any sense of, you know, reform in education could probably look to this video and figure out how to utilize what I'm about to suggest in higher forms of politics to help build America back up, all things considered. So yes, this is going to be a more political video, but it's going to be advocating on one specific subject, which is education, higher education. As you can see, this is based on the Met High School, which is created by Dennis Littke. And this high school was based in the states that I hail from. And I thought, again, from this political landscape, why hasn't anyone taken the opportunity to see what this high school was all about and transfer its highlights to other high schools? And the reason I suggest this in particular is the following. The Met High School, to my knowledge, even to this day, because it was, this is the high school I went to in around 2009, so it's been a while, but nonetheless, it is the only high school, still to my knowledge, that I'm aware of, that its sole creation and its sole purpose was to help individual students follow their individual passions. And that to me really speaks volumes. I mean, from what I've seen, it sounds like every other high school, and I could be wrong on this, still functions in the old school way of just continuing on education as if it were nothing. Now, granted, I have my own criticisms against this high school, don't get me wrong, but I want to present those two in a lot opportunities for us to think about how to actually increase the way we show higher education to our youth. As someone who has, gone through college and all of that, there hasn't been a lot of opportunities for me, especially where I'm from. And I do think a good portion of that is that there is this loss of connection between, job training versus, actual experience and so on and so forth, or direct experience. And I feel like if we can get it so that a lot more schools in the higher, in high school, for example, started to take in more of these responsibilities as a transfer between potential early jobs and education and, just whether or not you can be more prepared for college if that is something you choose to do. All of these things, I think, can be built on this foundation when it comes to education at the very minimum. So, for those who don't understand what I'm talking about, let me bring you in the experience of what the high school offers. So, let's create a hypothetical student, and I'll use myself as sort of the guinea pig, because I was wanting to be a writer during my experience in the Met High School. So, let's use that. Let's say there was a student who wanted to be a writer, right? And they enter this new high school that would be in another state, for example. So, what they would do is, while technically still learning about, the basics, or, slightly advanced basics, which I'll get into one specific one that I think should be mandatory, by the way, but a lot more of their time and focus would be learning how to incorporate those skills with what they want to do most, which would be writing. So learning about how to publish a book, how, the percentile, math with writing, for example, how to, to take the the percentages and figure out how much you are actually earning if you find a publisher, you know, things of that nature. How to, how to promote yourself. These are things that can be taught to you as a writer and that you can look into during your high school experience. Now, what makes this even better is, for example, we have the early event of this high school. The one I attended to in particular would have an event called a pick-me-up, and every single one of these would be different. And what they would do is allocate out to businesses and say, hey, instead of interviewing person after person after person, one-on-one, again and again and again, why not come to our high school, speak to 100 students plus, all at once about your business? And let's say they found a publisher, for example, since we're doing the writer, right? So we have a publisher who's looking for that new, fresh author material. So they come to the high school, and what I think would be allotted is if, the high schools were more properly taxed, because, a part of our tax goes back towards education, right? A bigger chunk of that would help with making sure that those business people that come in, whichever business they're a part of, that they're compensated for their time so that there's more incentive for them to come to said high school, whichever one it may be, regardless of state, come to these schools, educate these students, and say, hey, I'm looking for a future writer, blah, blah, blah. So we have our writer who's fascinated with this prospect when that pick-me-up event occurs. So what happens next is that the rest of the students disperse to continue to learn about what they want to learn, but the student who is fascinated, the writer, would get a longer opportunity to talk with the publisher and set up what's called, during this, exchange, a internship. From this point, with the teacher included, what they would do to set this internship up would be they would set up a few days. So let's take, for example, we take Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 days out of the 5 that they would be in high school. Instead of going to the high school, they would unironically go to the business on the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday instead of the high school and get direct experience in the field that they are interested in. That, to me, would absolutely decimate this old, decrepit system of the resume that we need to do away with, that we needed to do away with back all the way in 2000. Like, it's embarrassing that we still use this system that is so old and one-on-one and slow, and, as someone who took a business class was taught, you have to lie to do it. You have, they literally teach you in this business class, like, if someone asks you, what is your weaknesses, you're supposed to hint at a strength. You're technically lying, right? Instead of doing all of that bullshit, you actually just go to the school, get, and you speak. You're compensated on top of this, in this example, right? You get the swath of over 100 students, and you just find the ones that are actually interested in what you want to do. Again, the writer. So they set up the days, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Now they get that direct internship experience with the publisher. And from when I was in this high school, I believe the percentile of the amount of people who went from getting an internship to a job as 9th graders was close to 90%, I think. I'm estimating, because it's been a while. And imagine that amplified, but to every state. That would create so many new jobs that this would be the new foundation to help rebuild America from its crumbling foundations. Say what you will about the catchphrases of one opponent of Donald Trump. his claim to, his catchphrase being "Make America Great Again." My argument being is that America was never great. It's been fine at best. Still the best country, but it's always been fine to live here. I'm looking beyond my own selfishness when I say that. I'm looking at, what's the homeless rate at? What does our actual educational look like for all people across the United States of America? And I have consistently seen, from the point of me being in high school to me surpassing college and going through all of that, is that there's still so many people struggling. There's still so many people, who are going through the old school style of education and the SAT scores and all that bullshit. By the way, other high schools literally came back into the Met High School just to say you need to take these tests to prove that you're like any other high school, which we were forced to do. We should have argued against doing that, because all of it's bullshit. It's literally figurative waving competition nonsense versus other high schools. That's all the SATs are delivered to do. So now, imagine this, right? You have that 9th grader who gets the internship. By the time around relative to them getting to the 10th grade, they already get the job, let's say. And instead of doing a typical test, which is just nonsense that, everyone has been bored to death and you have to study for this stuff you don't care about. Instead of doing that, get this, what the Met does is called an exhibition. And on this exhibition, the students become the teachers. I'm not joking, this is what they did. So I became the teacher for a group of individuals, and I taught them several things, because during my own experience during the Met High School, I went through a lot of different internships because I was a bit all over the place growing up. Even though I wanted desperately to publish my book, I never could focus purely on that while in my own high school experience. I published my book deeper into college years, so I didn't quite get it. But nonetheless, and despite all of that, there were so many other students who were just absolutely crushing it. And again, apply that across the board of all the rest of the states. Imagine just all the new opportunities you would have. You would see unbelievable growth. So, you have these exhibitions, you're having people, the students becoming the teachers, and again, I talked about this mandatory class. And the one class that this high school doesn't have, and I don't think most other high schools have it either, and very little colleges even have it, is a tax class. Like, seriously, think about it. High school is like the threshold between you and your future education, that being college or work. Like, you are on the verge of being an adult by the time you graduate high school. So why aren't we teaching our young high schoolers how to do their taxes, what their taxes go into? Why aren't we doing this? It's so stupid that no one on the left or right has even thought of this. This is so simple of a thing to just teach our young students how to do their taxes. Again, what their taxes go towards, the percentiles, all of that stuff. Get it all covered and have it well meant. And there could be other quote-unquote mandatory classes, but I do think that one is the most pivotal among them. Definitely, for sure. So yeah, it is definitely one of the things that I think would gravely help young students as they're transitioning into adulthood and so on and so forth. So, if you're in the world of politics and if you came across this video, let other people know about this, because I do really think that this right here, this idea that was once again created by Dennis Litke. It's going to be a new wave, quite frankly. A new wave, a new future that I don't think a lot of people have really thought about. We haven't really, with all the other issues that have been coming across the United States, I don't see much riding high on the, the ticket of education personally, but it's something I've always been deeply dedicated to, despite me, surpassing college and getting a college degree and all that stuff. Like, I still really want to see, our future, around the world, or at least around the United States at first. Let's, cover our own asses first. At the very most, let's handle that first. And I do think, in terms of education specifically, I do think that this is the way to move forward. This is the way to teach students what they want to learn about. And the thing about this is what has come to light when even I was a student was students learn very different ways. You have students who learn very well via reading stuff, and that's the very traditional way of learning for all students, which is an issue because not all students learn like that, as it would turn out. Then you have students who have to visualize what they are learning. They have to see it. A presentation, for example, would be the ideal way to teach them. And then there's kinetic learners, I believe is the word that they use, which is like hands-on. You have to build something to like understand how it works or be very directly involved. And, one thing I had thought about is that for the longest time, video games, and I know it's bizarre to suddenly bring that up, video games, of all things, being something to help build our educational system, but I'm being quite serious. I mean, think about it. The way, most American households have most, systems, at least one system per household. It's like, it's our number one source of entertainment, or like one of the top ones. So why not utilize that? I mean, think about it, right? What are the things you do when you're playing a video game, right? You're visually looking at the video game, your eyes are glued to the screen, right? And you're hearing everything that the video game is audibly telling you, and you're kinetically holding the controller in your hand. You're actually physically dictating what the player character will do. So imagine this. Imagine you had, for an example, an historical video game teaching our students about history. Bring in a video game created by one of the very students, say, for example, let's say one of them were fascinated by making a video game. They make a history-based video game, teaming up with another student who's passionate about history. So now we have collaborating students collaborating together, connections, helping build bridges beyond, what we currently have. So now they build a video game based on history, and they, bring it back to the students, and the students now get to, even earlier ages could, play these video games, mayhaps, depending on, what type of video game it is, and actually have them, like, go through the history of something, whatever that subject is, right? Like, there are so many different ways that we can think about how to educate our students, and that's definitely one of the ones I had thought about very, very recently in terms of how to interconnect all three methods of how we learn as human beings about things in the world. So yeah, that's definitely something we could do or look into as well. And, once we build this framework from education, I think what we could do is then move outward, because again, there are various other issues, like homelessness and, the whole thing with Palestine and all of that. Like, all of those issues out there. But again, like, if we can think of the things that we can build here first to help build in a great structural way how to fundamentally change the way we run this, I think what would happen is that from that point moving outward to outward issues that are bigger, that those would be a lot easier to tackle once we actually tackle a foundational subject, which is why I have such a keen observation for education in particular, because I do think that that is one of the greatest bedrocks of moving us in a better direction in terms of how we, especially when you think about our future and all that corny stuff, or whatever. But point being is that I do think that this high school, in the way it functions still to this day, is leagues beyond any other high school that I'm aware of, to my knowledge. So, again, if you made it this far, and I would extend this to, regardless of side, I think that this could be something that both parties could look at. I know that there are other heavy disagreements, but I mean, I would hope that our education could be something that we could actually begin to, at least at the bare minimum, start to find a foundational way to change it so that everyone is satisfied, or enough people are satisfied that it's like, okay, this is a step forward, a legitimate step forward for us to help build America. And then, from there, instead of the other catchphrase, instead of all that nonsense, we can actually make America great for the first time and forever. And yes, I did quote a Disney song right there. But I mean, for me, that is true. That would be a truth. Like, we would finally actually be great as a nation and all that good stuff. So definitely spread this video out there. If you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description when I head over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Right? The business of YouTube. Second to my PayPal, we can help support me and my channel directly. And third to my Discord server, you can join, collab, and chill for free. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.